Hey, I'm Greg Wells. I am a musician and a record producer and a mix engineer, and I am super excited to introduce the Balcony Left plugin. Over the years, I have been fortunate enough to work with some of my favorite musicians, some of my favorite artists. I spent the last 3.5 years working very hard on the 2 Wicked movies and album soundtracks, working with Stephen Schwartz, the composer, and Stephen Aremus, the executive music producer. All 3 of us produced the music, and getting to accompany Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande was one of the honors of my life. When I was a studio musician in the mid-90s, I started to get really fascinated with the capture of amazing sounds done by some of the best engineers I'd ever been lucky enough to work with. And I would usually pummel those folks with questions. And quite often the answer either was partially or entirely an 1176 compressor. Through an engineer I met in Nashville in 1995, a friend of his had sourced an 1176 from a church balcony in St. Louis, Missouri. So I bought that for $1,400. It got shipped out to me, and there was a piece of tape on it that said balcony left. I got really inspired to create a software version of this glorious box because pretty much my entire career in terms of working with singers has been run through this hardware 1176. I think all 1176s sound great. There's something about this one that truly just has like this extra sort of like mojo, for lack of a better word. It is the best word really for it. It just does something where it kind of pulls extra life out of the thing that I'm trying to capture. I find it so immeasurably helpful. It also winds up sort of shaping the sound, not just from a compression dynamic control sound point, but by virtue of its own process, it kind of EQs the sound as well. I think it's a magic record-making box. And just selfishly for myself, the idea of being able to have multiple instantiations of this thing across a mix, like having 30 plugins of my glorious Balcony Left, was super exciting, and that's where this whole thing started. I wasn't even sure if I was going to release it. I just wanted to use it for myself. And then we got it to the point where it was so good, I could not tell the difference between having the hardware box inserted on the source or if I was using the plugin. They sounded indistinguishable to me. You know, I feel like I've been given a lot of help. I'm from a small town in Canada, Peterborough, Ontario. You know, nobody was really doing music professionally. It's a factory and a farming community, and there's just not much of a marketplace to be a full-time musician. So I did not grow up around this stuff. I've really walked backwards into all of this, and I've really cherished, and I have immense emotional connection about my passion for what makes a great record, and then meeting people who were attached or worked on some of those records and getting to ask them stuff. I like sharing that information with people. It's really fun to share war stories. It's really fun to share things in my toolbox that I've collected over the years that I have found super helpful. So many times I've had singers, sometimes, you know, brand new folks, sometimes the world's most famous singers, singing in my studio on one of my vocal mics. And then once I get the sound dialed in, which is always the hardware 1176 that I have here, the original Balcony Left, is a gargantuan component of that sound. And I cannot tell you how many times, I mean, it's like deep into the double digits where people will say, this is the best vocal sound I've ever heard in my headphones when recording a vocal. And that means a lot because some of these folks are super experienced. They've worked in the best studios with, you know, the best team around them. So it always gave me kind of a wind in the sails, like a confidence that, okay, there's something really right about this chain. When you get the voice sounding right, all of a sudden, the drums sound better. Everything sounds better. Things just kind of land. The thing I love about this plugin and about the original hardware unit itself is it has a real sonic footprint, and I find myself attracted to gear like that, whether it's hardware or software. I'm not usually looking for really clean, invisible, transparent stuff. I like stuff that kind of adds extra kind of funk in the trunk, just like something really interesting. This one really does that. You know, when you're using it, I think you will find that it's not subtle, but what's also fun about this is you can really drive it, you can really hit it hard, and things still sound big and fat. They don't sound choked like a lot of compressors can do. I can't think of anything I wouldn't use it on, really, including the mix bus. It's everywhere. It's on the kick drum, the snare drum, the toms, the bass, the piano, everything. I will also use it on like the final mix bus, and also the mix knob on the plugin, which obviously the hardware unit does not have. So you can dial in something that's pretty aggro and very collar grabbing, and then just dial it back to where you're only hearing like 25% of that. You can hit it a lot and it still doesn't sound like it's getting squashed. It just sounds more focused and like in the frame of how I want to present things. And then I'll play with the mix knob. Sometimes it's 100%, sometimes it's 50%, sometimes it's really subtle, like, 15, 20%. It depends what the source is. And it also obviously depends what the song is and the tempo and the vibe you're going for. But it's just like this indispensable tool for me, which truly I was excited about just using for myself. It honestly is the first thing I reach for when I'm mixing a song now. It's the very first thing I start putting on the different elements. I can't wait for people to hear it and to try it and see what it does for your music. I know what it does for mine.